Hi, I'm Katria. I spent 10 years and $35,000 saving the house my parents called their pride. I paid the mortgage, covered their bills, even helped my brother enroll in another failed course. They said I was the strong one, the dependable one. But when I finally paused, just once, my mother looked me in the eye and said, "You're just the wallet. Leave." They erased me from their story, transferred the deed behind my back, laughed at the ledger I kept to survive. And the worst part? I didn't find out because they confessed. I found out because they got lazy. How do you walk away from a family that only kept you close as long as you kept paying? Do you even get to call it family anymore? It was nearly 7 in the evening when I realized I hadn't spoken to anyone all day. My apartment in Portland was quiet, just the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional rustle from the window blinds as the breeze slipped through the cracks. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at a cup of tea that had long gone cold, the kind of cold that doesn't even hold the illusion of warmth anymore. My phone lit up on the counter again, screen flashing with the name I had memorized by muscle memory, Valora. No, Mom. Just Valora. She'd called 3 times already today, all ignored. Texts, too. I wasn't ready to open them, not yet. I reached for the phone but stopped short. Instead, I opened my banking app. There it was. Mortgage support, $980. Set on auto transfer, always scheduled for the 3rd Tuesday of each month. 10 years ago, it had felt like a lifeline. Now, it just looked like a leash. It started with a call from Valora a decade ago, back when I had just accepted my first full-time position after grad school. "Sweetheart, we're just a few months behind on the house. It's not permanent. Just until tax season, okay?" I'd been idealistic, freshly out of business school, wearing shoes I still hadn't broken in. So, of course, I said yes. I always said yes. Back then, I thought being dependable meant being loved. 3 months. That was the deal. But the months turned into seasons, and the seasons into years. I got promotions. I moved twice. I managed other people's finances at work, built portfolios, ran models. But somehow, I couldn't untangle the one transaction that bled me dry every month. The requests started changing too, from apologies to expectations. "Could you send it a bit earlier this month? You know how tight it gets." The warmth in Valora's voice cooled over time, each call more mechanical than the last, like reading a script she no longer believed I needed to hear. I began logging everything, every wire, every explanation. Notes titled Mom, March, Electrical Bill, Dad's Meds, Aaron's online class again. A quiet spreadsheet lived on my desktop like a shadow. It was never about the money. It was about the erosion of gratitude, of decency, of the unspoken rules of love. Last month was my birthday. I drove down to Stockton, bought my own cake from a bakery I used to love as a child, chocolate with raspberry filling. I didn't expect a celebration, just maybe acknowledgement. When I walked into their kitchen, cake in hand, Valora didn't even look up. "Oh, you brought dessert. That's thoughtful." Aaron was lounging on the couch, controller in hand. He grinned, stood up, and immediately grabbed the biggest slice. "Chocolate? Nice." They ate. They laughed. No one asked how I'd been. No one said happy birthday. I cleaned up the plates after, drove back to Portland that same night. I cried in the car, not from sadness, but from the absurdity of expecting anything else. There's a specific kind of fatigue that comes not from overwork, but from being needed in silence, from always being the solution and never the celebration. Tonight, as I scrolled through 10 years of bank records, I couldn't remember the last time someone in that family asked if I was okay. I read Valora's last text again. "We really need the mortgage paid this week, just like always. Just like always." I looked around my apartment, sparse, clean, my own. For a long time, I thought this place was too quiet. Now I found comfort in the stillness. No footsteps down the hallway, no Aaron blasting the TV, no Valora sighing in disappointment. I whispered it to myself, half out loud. Maybe they never wanted help, just a wallet with Wi-Fi. My phone buzzed again. Valora, again. I picked it up, hovered my thumb over the screen. Then, slowly, I pressed edit contact. Backspace, backspace, backspace. Valora, delete contact. And just like that, the screen dimmed. The light from the kitchen dimmed as the evening bled into night. I sat cross-legged on my worn couch, the same one I'd hauled up 3 flights of stairs by myself 6 years ago, sipping the remains of reheated coffee. The lamp beside me cast a soft yellow hue over the open laptop on the coffee table, its screen glowing with rows of numbers I knew by heart. Mortgage transfers, utility coverage, emergency fund reimbursements that were never reimbursed. Every line had a date, an amount, and a reason. I'd named them like chapters. July, HVAC repair. March, Dad's meds. Brandon, Photoshop subscription. Quiet acts of devotion, except no one ever called them that. The first year, Valora would say things like, "You saved us, baby." By year 3, it was, "Did you send it already?" And now it was silence, unless I forgot. Then it was guilt. Then it was my fault. Aaron once joked during a family barbecue, beer in hand, laughing loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Katria's basically our accountant, the financially responsible one, right? He nudged me like we were in on some secret joke. I didn't laugh. No one noticed. It hit me recently. The more I gave, the less they saw it. They didn't even register it as generosity anymore. It was obligation. I wasn't helping. I was fulfilling a role I hadn't auditioned for. They handed me a script and expected me to perform it with a smile. It wasn't long ago that I visited for a long weekend. No special occasion, just to check in. I brought groceries, filled their fridge, replaced their busted water heater. While Valora cooked, I stepped away to grab my notebook from my bag. I'd started keeping a physical copy of my transfers, not because I needed to, but because it helped me remember I was real, that what I did mattered. I left it on the table for 10 minutes. When I returned, Aaron was sitting in my chair, flipping through it like it was a joke book. Roof repair, March electric, Brandon's art course. Dang, sis! Who knew you ran a tab on us? He laughed. So did Valora. Not out of meanness, I think, but out of habit. They didn't see the ledger as sacrifice. They saw it as a punchline. That stung more than any insult. I could have handled an argument. At least then, my voice would matter. But they laughed. Like I was a clerk keeping score, instead of a daughter trying to hold the roof over their heads. Later that night, in the guest room I never redecorated, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan that wobbled every time it spun. I wasn't angry, not yet, just tired. There's a kind of ache that sits beneath your ribs when you realize the people you love don't see your love as love. Just convenience. I don't need applause, I whispered to myself. But laughter? That's a wound. The next morning, I packed early, before anyone woke up. On the drive home, I played an old podcast Valora used to love and turned the volume down halfway through. Her voice saying, "We'd be nothing without you," echoed in my head. But it had been years since I'd heard her say it out loud. Back in Portland, I lit a candle, opened my journal, and wrote down something I'd heard Oprah say once. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow. I underlined it. Twice. I wasn't ready to stop sending the money, not yet. Some habits take longer to break, especially the ones tied to love. But I started answering her texts slower. I stopped explaining when my payments would be late. I turned off the auto transfer. It was time they asked again. It was time I heard how they asked. That evening, my phone buzzed on the countertop as I was chopping vegetables. I wiped my hands, checked the screen. A text from Valora. Aaron's been struggling. Can you add a bit more this month? Just do what you always do. I stared at the message, blinking. No, how are you? No, thank you. No, sorry. Just expectation. And that's when it hit me. I hadn't been their daughter for a long time. I'd become their plan B. 3 years ago, I'd finally started to breathe. A promotion at the firm, better health insurance, fewer night calls. For once, I let myself consider something that hadn't crossed my mind since college. Homeownership. My own place. Nothing extravagant, just a small condo downtown with a brick facade, creaky wood floors, and a balcony barely big enough for a folding chair and 2 succulents. It was perfect. I remember walking through the unit that first afternoon. The sun spilled in at just the right angle. It felt like autonomy. Like I wasn't someone's daughter, someone's backup, someone's contingency. Just me. I paid the deposit that same week. Got pre-approved for a modest mortgage. My realtor smiled when I said I'd be signing within the month. I didn't tell anyone in Stockton. I wanted to hold something for myself, for once. But 2 days later, the phone rang. Valora's voice was softer than usual, almost hesitant. "Dad's been having tooth pain again," she said. "The estimate came in. It's more than we thought." I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. I sat there on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor. I knew what was coming next. I'd always known. Still, it hurt. "I just need to know you'll cover it. Just this once." Just this once. A phrase I'd heard so many times, it lost meaning. I called the realtor an hour later, told her something had come up. She was polite, disappointed. I got my deposit back 2 weeks later and wired the same amount to Valora's account that afternoon. I told myself I'd find another condo. I wrote in my journal that night. I told myself this was temporary. But I didn't believe it. Resentment is the silent tax of people-pleasing, and I had been paying it, compounding interest. That spring, I started writing down not just the amounts, but the costs. Not just the money, but what it stole from me. A trip I didn't take, a jacket I didn't buy, a sense of peace I never seemed to hold for longer than a day. Summer came, and with it, a Facebook notification. Aaron had posted a photo, him, standing in front of a brand new black Jeep. Windows tinted, grille polished, the caption shining almost as much as the paint. Finally treating myself. I earned this. My mouth went dry. I stared at that post, sitting at my desk, half a bowl of instant noodles going cold beside me. For 10 days straight, I'd been eating cheap ramen to stretch my food budget after the dental wire transfer. And there he was, smiling like a billboard. I called Valora that evening. "Hi, Mom," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "Oh, honey," she replied, breezy, almost distracted. "How are things?" I saw Aaron's post, a pause, then, "Oh, the car? He's had a rough stretch, you know. Let him enjoy something." I held the phone tighter. "So the money I sent—" "Don't be petty," she cut in. "He's been through a lot." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say, not then. That night, something shifted, something permanent. Maybe I was never the backup plan. Maybe I was the foundation. The reason anything stayed upright. They didn't build without me. They leaned on me like walls never needed to carry their own weight. So I started saving screenshots. Every wire transfer, every guilt-ridden text. The jokes, the receipts. I backed up my phone. Created folders, labeled things. Not for revenge, not yet. For clarity. A few weeks passed. Valora called again. Casual, light. She was asking about some insurance payment, Dad's maybe, or the house. I don't remember anymore. She said, "Can you cover the insurance next week?" I looked out the window. The city was buzzing, dusk settling in, life moving forward outside my walls. "No," I said. Just that. Silence crackled on the line. For once, I didn't fill it. I ended the call, didn't wait for her reply. And for the first time in a decade, the silence after saying no didn't scare me. It comforted me. The morning after I said no felt different, not dramatic, just still. I woke up before my alarm, made coffee in silence, and sat with the spreadsheet again, the one I kept updating without fail. I stared at the line I hadn't filled in. Week 4 and 12, $980. For the first time in a decade, it was blank. I didn't say no to punish anyone. I said no because I finally understood. I was never seen as someone who had limits, only as someone who was supposed to have endless reserves. Exactly a week after I missed the transfer, Valora called. Her voice wasn't panicked, just cold. "We're behind again," she said. "Why would you do this now?" I didn't blink. "I didn't forget, Mom. I just didn't send it." There was a pause, but not the kind that holds reflection, just calculation. "So you're letting us sink now?" she asked, her voice sharp enough to draw blood. I didn't respond. I didn't owe one. I'd played this scene before, over and over, except I used to apologize in the past. I used to explain, not this time. After I hung up, I scrolled through our old messages. Hundreds of them. In the early days, there had been some thank yous, even a "we're so grateful," but those stopped around year 3. I'd trained them, hadn't I? Trained them to believe that my silence was comfort. That help was my default setting. That money came from a bottomless, obligation-fed well. Later that day, while eating lunch at my desk, I opened Facebook. I hadn't used it much in recent years, but a notification had popped up. Valora had tagged Aaron in a post. It was a photo of the two of them in front of the house, arms around each other, smiling like a Hallmark card. Caption: "So thankful to my son, Aaron, for always standing by us and keeping our house stable. We are beyond blessed." My throat closed up. I stared at it, blinking hard. That was my deposit. My sleepless nights checking in with the mortgage office, my side job tutoring undergrads to make up for their emergency groceries, my skipped vacations, my ruined birthdays. The comments poured in. "Aaron is such a good man. True family takes care of each other. God bless him." I clicked into the post, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I typed, "You know and deleted it. Typed again. "Actually, it was me." And deleted that too. No use screaming into a room where no one believes your voice belongs. Instead, I clicked save, downloaded the post, printed it when I got home, and pinned it into my journal, right under the page that read, Week 4/12, not paid. I wrote next to it, "Final straw." I didn't need them to change. I just needed to know the truth loud enough that I'd stop hoping otherwise. I opened the spreadsheet again, noticed how full it was, how carefully I'd labeled it. And yet, to them, it was invisible. That night, as I prepped dinner, a message popped up from my cousin Moraine. It was a voice note, sent to our extended family group chat by accident. I hit play out of habit. Valora's voice came through, soft but edged with sarcasm. "She's too sensitive. Let her sit with her attitude for a while. She'll crawl back eventually." I didn't crawl. I stood taller than I ever had. And I made my first real move. Returning to Stockton after weeks of silence wasn't a gesture of peace. It was a test. I wasn't there to reconnect or rebuild. I was there to see if anything had changed, even a little. If they'd noticed the space I had carved by finally saying no. If they'd felt the absence of my obedience. The occasion was a small celebration Valora threw for paying off the house. I got the invite by text, casually slipped into a group message like a weather update. "Mortgage done. Small get-together this weekend. Come by if you're around." I hesitated before responding. But then I thought, maybe it's better to look them in the eye once more, before I close the door. When I arrived, the house looked the same, except shinier. Fresh paint, new planters, the porch light no longer flickered. My money was everywhere, but my name was nowhere. I brought a modest bottle of wine, the kind you gift when you're not sure if you're a guest or just passing through. Valora greeted me at the door with a polite smile. She hugged me like someone hugs a neighbor they forgot they owed a favor to. Inside, a few extended family members milled about, sipping punch and nibbling on supermarket cookies. I recognized faces, but didn't feel warmth. I wasn't sure they even remembered what I looked like anymore. As the evening settled, Valora clinked her glass to get everyone's attention. "We're finally done," she beamed. "This house is paid off. It hasn't been easy, but we've made it. And it's all thanks to Aaron." She turned toward him, eyes soft with pride. "My son, the rock. Always there when we needed him." Applause broke out. Aaron grinned, did a modest shrug, like he'd been surprised by the praise. A cousin said, "Wow, what a man!" And someone added, "Aaron always shows up." I stood in the corner with my untouched wine glass, breath caught in my throat. I didn't blink. I didn't move. I just let it wash over me like a wave I knew would come, but still hit harder than expected. That was my deposit. That was my spreadsheet, my 3 a.m. transfers, my phone calls to the mortgage officer begging to extend due dates, my skipped health checkups, my just this once that turned into a decade. They buried the truth and replaced it with a smile and a speech. And I realized, in that moment, it wasn't oversight. It was narrative control. Dinner followed shortly after. A long table filled the room, chairs snug on all sides. I stood, waiting for someone to slide a seat over. No one moved. Valora gestured lazily toward the kitchen. "Oh, you can take the stool. You used to love that little thing when you were younger." Aaron smirked. "Back to the princess perch, huh?" Everyone chuckled. I sat on the stool. My knees hugged the counter awkwardly. My back ached. My heart didn't. Because in that moment, something detached. Some final chord. And I thought, if you sit where you're not welcomed, you're endorsing the seating chart. After dinner, I didn't linger. I packed quietly, didn't say goodbye. I didn't need to explain my exit. I wasn't a member walking out. I was a guest who had overstayed her welcome. Back in my car, I sent a single message to Valora. "I won't be visiting again anytime soon. I see where I stand." She read it at 10:47 p.m. and didn't respond. Of course she didn't. She never needed to. A week later, back in Oregon, I came home to find an envelope slipped through my door. No return address. The handwriting was familiar, tight, slanted, efficient. On the front, it read, "To Ms. Katria, former contributor." The envelope sat unopened on my kitchen counter for 2 hours. I had recognized the handwriting immediately. Valora's, sharp and precise, like the woman herself. I'd half expected another passive-aggressive letter about family values, or an anniversary party I wasn't really invited to. But what I found inside was worse. It was proof. A notice from the mortgage lender dated 3 weeks ago. The account hadn't received a full payment in over 8 months. Balance past due. Risk of collections. I sat down hard at the table, heart not racing, but slowing, because I knew I'd been sending money, faithfully, for years. Nearly $3,000 since the last documented payment. I opened my laptop and pulled up my transfers. March, April, May. I matched every deposit against the mortgage records. Nothing, no traces, no payments forwarded to the lender. That money had gone somewhere else, and they hadn't told me. They hadn't even bothered to pretend anymore, so they cashed in my silence. I sat there remembering Valora's words just 4 months ago. "We're finally caught up, thanks to you." A lie. Not a white one. Not a convenient stretch of the truth. A lie spoken straight into the phone, dripping with manufactured gratitude. But the gratitude had expired. They had stopped pretending the money mattered, and just assumed it would come, like an old habit. A habit I was supposed to keep funding while they rewrote the story. I clicked through the county property records site. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, until I found it. The house I grew up in, the one I had spent a decade helping to keep afloat, was no longer in Orville's name. The deed had been quietly transferred 6 months ago. New owner, Aaron B. Carter. I stared at the screen, checked the dates again, re-entered the parcel number. My stomach didn't drop. It calcified. My jaw clenched, not in panic, but in a calm so absolute it was terrifying. They planned my exit. They just never told me I was leaving. For a while, I didn't move. I just let the cold wash over me. Then I got up and began printing things. The mortgage notice, my transfer records, the deed. I pulled out a manila folder and wrote on the front in black ink, Reality. This wasn't going to be a shouting match. I had shouted in my head for years, and it got me nowhere. This was going to be a documentation, a case, a reckoning, not in court, but in record. They thought silence was weakness, but silence is just a loaded weapon, waiting. As I organized papers on my living room floor, I glanced at my inbox. One flagged email stood out, buried under months of junk. Subject: Power of attorney, use only if needed. From Valora. Sent almost 4 years ago. I had forgotten I'd signed it. Back then, Dad was having health scares, and she said it would help her manage utilities if anything happened to him. I hadn't asked questions. I'd just signed, like I always did. But someone hadn't forgotten, and someone had definitely used it. The glow of my laptop lit the otherwise dark apartment. It was past midnight, but I couldn't sleep. The PDF attachment Valora sent years ago had sat unopened in my inbox until now. The subject line read, Power of attorney, use only if needed. The irony burned hotter with every click. The scanned form appeared. My name, signed in blue ink, and Valora's elegant handwriting neatly scrawled underneath. It was the same signature I'd watched glide across birthday cards, school forms, and excuse notes for field trips. Now it sat stamped beside a notary seal, legally binding the betrayal I didn't see coming. My trust had been turned into a weapon. The transfer of the house to Aaron was no accident. It had been executed under my own delegated authority, an authority I had handed over during a stressful time, back when Dad's health was shaky and Valora had said, just in case I need to help with the bills. Help. That word would never mean the same again. I emailed the document to a friend of mine, a legal consultant I trusted. She confirmed it was valid. Unethical? Absolutely. Illegal? Not really. But if you want to contest the transfer, you'd be opening a war. This isn't war, I told her. It's surgery. I didn't want revenge. I wanted removal, an extraction of everything that kept me tied to people who wrote me out while cashing in. So I started organizing. Mortgage records, transfer logs, emails from the lender, bank screenshots. Every dollar I sent, every silence that followed. I labeled the new folder on my desktop in case they try again. This wasn't paranoia. This was preparation. I backed up my phone, exported messages, saved voicemail files, and pulled credit reports for good measure. Quietly, thoroughly, strategically. Later that evening, my cousin Moraine accidentally sent a voice note to the family group chat. I didn't even realize she still used it. I tapped it, more from muscle memory than curiosity. Iran's voice filled the room. She's not a victim, she's an ATM who finally bounced. Let her sulk. It'll teach her not to mess with family. There was a laugh at the end. His. Confident. Cruel. I played it again, then again. He didn't just know what happened. He approved. He relished it. I saved the voice note into the same folder. Renamed it. They always knew. That night, I renamed the family group chat too. Called it Observing. I didn't respond to anything in it. Just read the messages as they came in. Requests for updates on Orville, recipes, small talk. 2 days later, without fanfare or warning, I left the group. I didn't write a farewell. I didn't explain. Silence wasn't absence anymore. It was declaration. Just before bed, I brushed my teeth and checked my email one last time. A notification from my bank sat at the top of the screen. It read, New auto debit scheduled, Brandon's tuition support, $600. My heart didn't pound. It steadied. I hadn't authorized it. I didn't even know Brandon had enrolled in anything. I hadn't spoken to him in nearly 2 years. Someone had accessed my linked bank information, and it wasn't a mistake. The email hit my inbox at 8:07 a.m. on a Thursday. I was mid-sip on my second coffee, half reading a client's investment projection, when I saw the subject line, Scheduled auto debit confirmation, Brandon's tuition support. My hands froze. I hadn't set up any tuition payments, let alone for someone who hadn't spoken to me since college. I clicked into the message. The linked bank account was mine. The routing number tied to my main checking. And the setup timestamp? 2 days ago? The access location? Stockton. I stared at the screen in disbelief, then fury. They'd gotten into my account. Again. But this time, they didn't even bother to ask. They just helped themselves, like they always had. Only now, there wasn't even the decency of a phone call, a fake excuse, a weak apology. I picked up my phone and dialed Moraine. She answered after 3 rings. Katria, is everything... Did you send that voice note on purpose? There was a pause. The kind that lingers when someone's deciding whether to lie. I meant to send it to your mom, not the group. I didn't realize... I'm not asking why it went public. I cut in, calm and cold. I'm asking if you still have the original. Another pause. Yes, I do. Send it to me, unedited. She hesitated. You really want to hear that again? I need to. 10 minutes later, it arrived. I sat down, hit play, and let Valora's voice pour through my speakers. If she cared about family, she'd keep paying. She's not a daughter. She's just the wallet. There it was. No metaphor, no sugarcoating, just clarity. I played it twice, then a third time. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I sat still, taking in every syllable like a final diagnosis. They didn't just rely on me. They had rewritten who I was, to them, and eventually to themselves. I wasn't the one they called when they needed help. I was the system they leaned on and blamed when it failed. They didn't just expect me to give. They erased my identity to justify it. I called Valora that evening. I didn't wait. I didn't text to ask if she was free. I just dialed. She picked up after the first ring. Hello? I'm recording this call, I said. You should know that before we go any further. Katria, I know about the house transfer. I know about the auto debit. I know you used the power of attorney I gave you 5 years ago to sign away the deed to Erin. That wasn't me, she said quickly. That was... I have the document. Your signature, your notary, and now, your voice. Silence. You accessed my bank account without permission. You signed legal property over under my authority. You let Aaron siphon money while telling people he saved the house. I didn't think it would go this far, she murmured. We didn't think you'd cut us off. I'm not asking for an apology, I said. I'm confirming what you are. You walk away from this family, don't expect to be welcomed back. This isn't walking away. It's closing a door that should have never been open this long. And then I hung up. I didn't need to hear what came next. The scrambling, the blaming, the half-built justifications. I'd listened to enough of those for a lifetime. That weekend, I changed everything. Banking logins, email passwords, recovery phone numbers. I shut down every shared account, blocked every known contact from Stockton, and opened a fresh account under a new bank. I even changed my emergency contacts at work and filed to revoke the power of attorney officially. I sat in my lawyer's office Monday morning, handing over every printed document. You're ready to file a no contact if they push again, she said. I'm not filing anything, I replied. I'm just making sure they never get the chance to file anything in my name again. When I got home that evening, I deleted the family group chat from my phone, removed the backups, erased the thread history. I blocked Valora and Iran from every platform. No explanations, no emotion, just silence. And as I sat alone in my apartment, the windows open to a quiet street, I whispered, It feels like grieving a family that died years ago. I was just late to the funeral. 2 days later, an email appeared in my inbox. The sender address was unfamiliar. The subject line read, I know what they did, and I have proof. It was signed, simply, Orville. Rain tapped gently against the windows of my apartment, a steady rhythm that matched the quiet weight in my chest. It was Tuesday morning, early. I hadn't slept. The email from Orville had arrived at 3:11 a.m., time-stamped like a ghost who finally decided to haunt me in the light. There wasn't much to it. Just a brief note. You should have been told the truth earlier. I didn't stop them. That's on me. Attached were scanned copies of mortgage notices, past due, late penalties stacking, foreclosure warnings, dated as far back as 8 months. I didn't know if the ache I felt reading those lines was disappointment or relief. Maybe both. Orville had always been the quiet one. The man behind the papers, the porch chair, the muted responses. He never interfered, never defended, never raised a voice. Now I knew why. He wasn't absent, he was watching, and I had been wrong. The letter the bank sent me months ago wasn't a mistake. It was the first clue. I'd tossed it aside thinking it was a clerical error. But Orville? He had given them my email years ago as a backup. A just-in-case measure that became the only real truth I was ever handed. They knew the house was failing, but still smiled in my face, still told me everything was fine, still let me believe I was helping when I was just padding their comfort. I sat still for a long time, reading Orville's words again. I wanted to believe they'd fix it. I thought you'd forgive it. But I was wrong about them, and about you. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a plea. It was a confession. Quiet, heavy, overdue. He wrote that he had overheard Valora and Aaron discussing the property transfer. That he hadn't agreed, but hadn't objected. He said he stayed silent because he thought if he said something, it would unravel too much. And now, the silence had unraveled everything. I saved the email, labeled it testimony, added it to the folder on my desktop with all the others. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Later that afternoon, I forwarded the voice recording of Valora calling me the wallet to Moraine. She responded within minutes. "Please don't involve me in this," she wrote. "I'm already getting calls from Valora. This is putting me in a really uncomfortable position." I stared at the message, typed and deleted 10 different responses. Finally, I sent one line. "I wasn't asking you to choose. I just hoped you already had." Then I deleted the thread. It hurt, but it was clean. The way truth slices through hope. No hesitation, no slow bleed, just clarity. I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I didn't feel angry. I felt finished. That night, I sat in bed and looked through everything again. Orville's email, the house deed, the bank statements, my own words scrawled in the margins of receipts, text message screenshots. I didn't need to build a case. I didn't need to explain what happened. I just needed to make sure I remembered. Because memories are easy to rewrite, but evidence tells its own story. As I was packing up for work the next day, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, one missed call, then a voicemail. I froze. My screen said, "Stockton General Hospital." I didn't open it right away. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to care again, but I was about to find out if I still could. The voicemail played through the car's speakers as I sat parked outside my office. "This is Stockton General Hospital. We're calling regarding Orville Carter. He was admitted early this morning with stroke symptoms. You're listed as the emergency contact. Please call us back." I didn't move, not even to blink. Of all the people they could have called, why me? Back in the early days of their chaos, when I still believed love was owed by effort, I'd filled out the hospital forms. Valora said Orville wouldn't remember details, and Aaron didn't do paperwork, so I did what I always did. I signed my name, just in case. Now, I was that case. I didn't pack much, just a small duffel and the folder labeled Reality. It felt like traveling into the past with the full weight of the present in my trunk. Driving into Stockton was like entering a dream I'd long since outgrown. Everything was familiar, but none of it belonged to me anymore. At the hospital, the nurse glanced at her screen and said, "You're still listed as his contact. That surprises me." "Me too," I said. Valora wasn't there. Neither was Aaron. Just Orville, lying in a bed that seemed too big for what remained of him. I sat down, not close, but within reach. His hand was still, his breathing shallow. The machines hummed in place of conversation. And yet, somehow, this silence felt less cruel than the words I'd been hearing for years. 2 years ago, I had called Valora for help after a minor car accident. My deductible was high, and I'd spent the last of my savings on her utility bill that same month. "I just need a small loan," I said. $400, just for the week." Her voice had been quick and clipped. "I'm sorry, honey. Things are tight. We're still helping Aaron get his life together." That call haunted me now as I looked at the man who had stood by while everything about me was dismissed. Orville stirred. His eyes fluttered open, found mine. "Katria," he whispered, hoarse but certain. "I'm here." "They didn't listen to me," he said. "I should have said more." I nodded. "No, you should have done more." He closed his eyes again. I waited for an apology that didn't come. And I didn't need it anymore. I left before the hour passed. No one saw me arrive. No one saw me leave. A week later, I was scrolling Facebook in the break room when a post stopped me cold. A relative had tagged a photo. "Rest in peace, Grandma. So beautiful seeing the family together today." I stared at the screen. My grandmother had passed. The funeral had already happened. No call. No message. Not even a whisper. They had erased me, even from grief. In the photo, Valora stood at the front, holding flowers. Aaron beside her. People I hadn't seen in years filled the background, smiling like the story was whole. I stared at the picture and whispered, "Except the one who paid for the casket." Because I had. I'd wired the money a year prior, when Grandma was hospitalized. They'd asked under the guise of advance funeral planning. And like a fool, I gave without question. On a quiet Sunday, I drove alone to the cemetery. I found her stone, kneeled beside it, and placed a single white flower next to the marble. Then I took out an envelope and laid it at the base of the headstone. Inside was a copy of the mortgage summary. At the top, I had written in red ink, "This isn't forgiveness. This is a record." I walked away without looking back. Back home, I found a letter waiting in my mailbox. A thick one, with the name of a law firm I recognized from Valora's email history. Inside, petition to dispute asset ownership, pending response. They thought I would disappear quietly. They were wrong. The petition arrived folded in perfect thirds, tucked into a heavy manila envelope from a law firm based in Sacramento. I opened it on a slow Sunday morning, the kind I usually reserved for laundry and journaling, not battles disguised in legal stationery. The opening paragraph was a blur of legal phrasing, but the heart of it was clear. Valora and Aaron were contesting my implied role in the house. Their argument? That my contributions were not investments, but gifts, gestures of familial goodwill without expectation. I read the phrase 3 times. Unreciprocated gifts. The words hit harder than they should have, not because I didn't expect it, but because I had lived this argument before, just never with court stamps and legal formatting. This was a lawsuit built from emotional gaslighting, now dressed in professional language. They weren't just erasing my name. They were trying to erase my memory of what I'd done, of what I'd carried. I reached out to Claudia, my attorney friend. She scanned the petition in silence, lips tightening just slightly as she flipped the pages. They're not asking for anything enforceable. They just want to rattle you. If you respond, it validates the threat. And if I don't? Sometimes the loudest win is to make them shout into silence. That sat with me. For once, I had nothing to prove. No duty to respond. No desire to be seen or heard or acknowledged. I had outgrown the need to be justified. Instead of reacting, I started releasing. I pulled open the closet and donated every box tied to birthdays I never celebrated, holidays I attended out of guilt, cards I wrote but never received back. The pictures came off the walls, the fridge magnets with group photos, the little knickknacks labeled, "Love you, Mom." I didn't burn anything. I wasn't angry. I was done. I remembered something Maya Angelou once said. I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. By Wednesday, my apartment looked different, lighter, airier. I swapped out every frame with photos I'd taken on hikes, city walks, even bad selfies from coffee shops where no one knew me by anything but my name on the cup. That same afternoon, I opened my laptop and typed out a brief response to the law firm. I acknowledge receipt of your client's petition. No action will be taken. All financial contributions ceased as of July 3rd, 2022. No signature. Just my name. Just enough. The next few days were quiet. Still, I'd expected some kind of fallout, but there was none. Valora didn't call. Aaron didn't text. The silence didn't scare me anymore. It satisfied something I didn't know needed satisfying. Then, on Saturday morning, I found another envelope waiting at my door. Smaller this time. No law firm logo. Just my name written in blocky capital letters. Inside was a single spreadsheet. My spreadsheet, printed and highlighted. Each dollar I'd ever sent. Every line item, groceries, repairs, tuition, medicine. At the bottom, a note written in Valora's hand. Hope this gives you closure. I held the paper for a long time, read it once, then again. It wasn't closure, it was confirmation. And I wasn't the one who needed it anymore. Morning light spilled across my apartment like a clean page. No framed photos cluttered the shelves. No stacks of envelopes with return addresses from Stockton. Just stillness, space, and the spreadsheet Valora had mailed me last week. It was their final shot. A neat table of every dollar I'd ever sent. Highlighted rows, labels like Groceries 2016 and Roof Repair 2018. At the bottom, inner cursive, so you won't forget what you meant to this family. I didn't forget. I documented. I walked to my printer, pulled up the most recent files in the reality folder, and printed a notarized cease and desist letter, screenshots of the bank access logs, the voicemail from Aaron, the property deed transfer filed under my name through power of attorney, signed without consent. I slid them into an envelope along with Valora's spreadsheet. On a yellow sticky note, I wrote, I don't forget, I document. I mailed it the same day, certified. But that wasn't the end. Later that week, I walked to the corner print and ship shop and sent 3 more anonymous packages. The first went to the community church, where Valora often spoke about family unity. Inside, the spreadsheet, the bank transfer logs, and a simple printed question. Would you call this unity? The second was addressed to Mrs. Hensley, our old neighbor, who used to brag about how Valora raised such a tight ship. I included the property deed and a copy of the note. She gave her daughter's money to her son and told everyone he saved the house. The third package landed in the ethics division at the mortgage lender's headquarters. That one carried only facts, mortgage statements, Aaron's name on the deed, the timeline of transfers. No name attached. No need. Back home, Claudia, my attorney friend, sent one final letter to Valora. All future communication must occur through legal counsel. Our client no longer maintains financial ties or familial obligation. Any attempts to engage will be treated as harassment. I didn't sue. I just made sure they couldn't find the door back to me. The next morning, I walked past my desk and saw something taped to the wall above it. A single sheet I had printed last year, almost as a dare to myself. Aaron's quote, "She's just the wallet." I read it once, then picked up a black marker and wrote below, "I was never the wallet. I was the whole foundation," and I walked away intact. For the first time in years, I booked something that didn't revolve around guilt. A 2-week cabin rental near Cannon Beach. Just me. No phone, just a journal, a camera, and a sealed envelope with one crisp dollar bill inside. On the envelope, I wrote, "The last thing I'll ever give them. No dramatic exits, no statements to post, just absence. Because forgiveness is a gift. I'm not giving it. I'm choosing something better, indifference." When I returned from the coast, sun-touched and calm in a way that no one in Stockton had ever seen me, I found a voicemail waiting. The voice was familiar, soft, a little older than I remembered. I heard what happened. If you're ready to talk, not about them, but you, I'm here. I didn't hit delete. Because for once, the story wasn't about who I left. It was about who I could become.